So ever since the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct wrapped up, there's been quite a wave of negative emotions kind of towards certain aspects of this system. And I've talked about things that I haven't liked on this channel with this, but this isn't going to be a negative video. This is a video that's actually going to be something I find to be very surprising. And when you kind of take a step back and look at the larger picture of things with the Nintendo Switch 2, I think this should be a very shocking thing to you. Now, I'm not trying to diminish people who have a negative outlook towards certain aspects of the system. If you don't like Mario Kart World being $80, like, I fully understand that. I don't like it being $80 either. I think it should be $70. If you don't like the Nintendo Switch 2 Tour being $10 instead of bundled in with the system, and then Nintendo says, oh, well, it's only $10. Like, it's just $10. If you don't like that mindset, I understand. I'm right there with you. If you don't like the fact that voice chat is locked behind, of course, the C button, which if you don't have Switch Online, your system will just do nothing when you press that, even though it is a built-in feature to the system. I understand that. I completely understand that. But it seems like the negativity has kind of just taken over all of the conversation with the system. And, I'm somewhat guilty of that as well because I like to look at different points. But that's why today's video is going to be a positive video, because I think this is very impressive just because it's Nintendo. Because I don't think many of us expected this sort of thing to happen with Nintendo themselves, because when you think about Nintendo since, the GameCube era, ever since, the Wii, the Wii U, the Switch, it's been a bit of a size gap in the difference between the flagship Nintendo system and the flagship systems for the other brands such as PlayStation and Xbox. But now it seems like that gap is shrinking pretty quickly. And so I kind of want to highlight some of the stories that have come out and kind of show you guys why this is like the most unexpected thing with Nintendo, and really by extension the Switch 2. So first thing was an article that came out on Nvidia's website on April 3rd that kind of, once again, flew under the radar. Nintendo Switch 2 leveled up with NVIDIA AI-powered DLSS and 4K gaming. And within this, they basically talk about some of the different things going on here, with 1,000 engineer years of effort across every element, from system and chip design to custom GPU application programming interfaces and world-class development tools. The Switch 2 brings major upgrades. They talk about stuff like ray tracing tensor cores and tensor cores for stunning visuals, stuff that I don't really care about, but I like to see these words because I think they're interesting. And as you read along here, the new RT cores bring real-time ray tracing, delivering lifelike lighting, reflections and shadows for more immersive worlds. Tensor cores power AI-driven features like DLSS, deep learning super sampling, boosting resolutions for sharper details without sacrificing image quality. Tensor cores also enable AI-powered face tracking and background removal in video chat use cases, enhancing social gaming and streaming. Well, we learned a little bit about that part. But, the Switch 2 has 10 times the graphics performance of the original Nintendo Switch because of these things, because of variable refresh rates such as NVIDIA G-Sync in handheld mode ensures ultra smooth, tear-free gameplay. And I think all of this sounds very modern. And even if you're not like a big technical related person, you would know that things like ray tracing are for whatever reason the big push in gaming right now. And I'm not a huge fan of it, but to see a handheld system being capable of these sorts of things, being capable to have G-Sync so that you're not having screen tearing when in handheld mode, so that you get variable refresh rates within games on handheld mode, it's very impressive. It's very impressive that Nintendo decided to go with a beefier system in this, because really, when you think about it, leading up to this system, what was everything that we heard? We basically heard that it was going to be like a PS4 or an Xbox One in handheld format. But is that really the case? Because does a PS4 have up to 120 frames per second? Does a PS4 have ray tracing? Does a PS4 have DLSS upscaling? Does a PS4 have G-Sync built into it? Like, no, it just doesn't. It's a matter of, maybe in terms of like specs, it's similar, but in terms of application, it can be very different. And that gets me to the second point, and really the more main point of this video, is that Nintendo is actually embracing this sort of new technology, and we're already seeing the results of this. Look at something like Metroid Prime 4 Switch 2 Edition. 4K 60 frames per second in docked mode, or 1080p 120 frames per second in docked mode. Your dealer's choice. So you have a graphics mode and a performance mode. And that doesn't seem like the standard Nintendo to me. This is a company that, in the age of HD becoming the standard, stuck with the Wii forever. That didn't have, it didn't have an HDMI port. It was a 480p system. That's what it was. That was the maximum output resolution of that. Nintendo has always kind of shied away from like any sort of like graphics war, and obviously the Switch was able to handle some things in a very positive manner. But for a Nintendo game to be 4K 60, 1080p 120 frames per second, dealer's choice on what you want, that seems like a different Nintendo. And then we have to talk about Mario Kart World, because yes, $80, I get it. It's not an easy pill to swallow, and I'm not trying to justify it in any way, shape, or form. However, there are now reports coming out that Mario Kart World is going to run, or at least have the option to run, at 120 frames per second. So once again, what if Mario Kart World is 4K 60 or 1080p 120? What if, and this is what I want to drive home with you guys, what if Nintendo's new standard for first-party games, because of this NVIDIA partnership, because of things like DLSS, because of things like additional power of this system, what if that's the new baseline for Nintendo games, is 4K 60 or 1080p 120? Is that what you expected from this system? Did you even expect 120 frames per second? Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't. I don't think a lot of people did. I thought, we would get 60 frames and, that would probably be it. More than likely, maybe there would be some outlier games, some third-party games, but from Nintendo themselves, no, that's not the case. People like to say, well, DLSS makes it so that, it's not truly 4K and stuff like that. But that's the thing. Digital Foundry has looked at all of the footage of these Switch 2 games, and the only game that they could come to somewhat of a conclusion of that is actually using the DLSS is Street Fighter 6. And we took a look at Street Fighter 6 in our comparison video from about a week or so ago, where we looked at PS5 games and PS4 games versus Switch 2 versions of games. And Street Fighter 6 is running better on the Switch 2 and looks better on the Switch 2 than it does on the Xbox Series S. So that brings me back to my main point of this is very unexpected from Nintendo, because if you are going out there and saying that this is a baseline, a baseline system would be comparable to PS4 or Xbox One, I mean, that's really not the case. And I mean, like I said, maybe in terms of raw power or something like that, maybe that's where people are drawing this up from. But the fact that this system is running third-party games better than Xbox Series S edition games, which, I hate to break it to you, that is a next-generation console. And look at what they've been able to get out of that Xbox Series S over time. Now they're adding in Baldur's Gate. Remember Baldur's Gate 3? There was a whole big controversy about putting it on Xbox because of the Xbox Series S, and they couldn't do the split screen mode, and they didn't want to remove features. Well, guess what? The new patch for Baldur's Gate 3, the final patch, includes split screen now on the Xbox Series S. So if companies are able to get that much in 4 years out of a system, what are they going to be able to do with the Switch 2? I don't think anyone really saw this coming from Nintendo and the Switch 2. And I know that there's a lot of negativity out there, and rightfully so. But we're talking about a system that at its core is a hybrid. It is not just designed to play on your television. It is designed to play in the palm of your hand. When you play it in the palm of your hand, you could still get up to 120 frames per second. You still get that variable refresh rate because of the G-Sync put into it. The combination of modern technology is going to make this system, I think, very impressive for people. You know, is it going to look as good as the PlayStation 5 Pro? No. But will it be able to run similar games to the PlayStation 5 Pro? I think so. Because the PlayStation 5 Pro is the outlier. That's not the main SKU for PlayStation. The PlayStation 5 is. So if you're making a PlayStation 5 version, you're making an Xbox version, you're making an Xbox Series S version, but third-party games are already running better on the Switch too. You see what I'm getting at with this? I think Nintendo did good on the hardware side of things. That $450 price point don't bother me whatsoever. Does not bother me whatsoever. When you compare it to what else is out there, I think you're getting a pretty good bang for your buck. And, you know, this being the first wave of games, I'm very interested to see what else is in the pipeline, especially from third-party developers. And hopefully, once we get these games in hand in June, you know, I'm buying a bunch of these third-party games because I want to check them out and see how they perform. I think we might be in for a little bit of a surprise. So let me know in the comment section down below. Are you surprised that Nintendo seems to be embracing more modern technology with this system, you know, having things like ray tracing and variable refresh rates and a 120 hertz screen? Like, does that sound like the Nintendo of old, or could we be seeing a new, you know, era of this company that's maybe still focused on the fun, but maybe a little bit of the business side too? And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. Be sure to check out the wealth of other videos on this channel from the past week. I think I'm slowing down on the 2 a day. It's not really that much to talk about, but, you know, I'm sure that will change once things start getting exciting again. And as always, guys, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.